Okay, so in this section we're going to be talking about electrons and how they are involved in giving off light. But before we do that, we need to talk just about electromagnetic radiation and light in general. So I'm going to draw a couple little diagrams here and talk about wavelength and frequency. So you might have talked about these before, but a wavelength is the distance from the top of one wave to another. Or it could be the distance from the bottom of one wave to another. Either way you want to think about it. That is the wavelength. Now frequency is something else. The frequency is how many waves pass a given point per second. So it's kind of like how spaced out your waves are. And frequency is measured in hertz, which is the same thing as seconds to the -1. Seconds to the -1 is the same thing as 1 over seconds, actually, if you're curious. So those are kind of all the same unit, just written different ways. Now, one thing that you really need to understand is that as wavelength goes up or increases, I'm just going to draw an up arrow to make that easier to write. So as the wavelength gets bigger, the frequency is going to go down. And if you think about it, it makes sense. If you've got long waves, they're not going to pass a given point as often. Frequency is going to go down and energy is going to go down. So long waves don't have a lot of energy. That's things like radio waves. Don't have a lot of energy. Now, the opposite is true. As wavelength decreases, so as the waves get smaller, frequency is going to go up, and energy is also going to go up. So really high energy radiation like gamma rays or X-rays have really small waves. Okay, just to drive this home a little bit more, one more diagram. I'm going to draw some really long waves. So we're going to say this is a long wavelength. So it is going to have low frequency and low energy. And we're going to draw the opposite. So these are very short wavelengths. And they are going to have a high frequency and high energy. Okay, so last thing we need to write down on here, you need to be familiar with what is called the electromagnetic spectrum. And so you probably have learned this at some point before in your life. This is all the different types of electromagnetic radiation. So it starts down here with radio waves, and then we have microwaves, and then IR stands for infrared radiation. We have visible light right here. UV stands for ultraviolet radiation, and then we have X-rays and gamma rays. So radio waves are low frequency. They have a long wavelength and they have low energy. And then gamma rays have a high frequency, short wavelength, and high energy. So you need to be able to say, like if I ask you which has more energy, microwaves or UV, you would need to be able to say UV has more energy. Last thing, you need to know the order of visible light from most energy to least energy. So red is the lowest energy, orange, and then yellow, green, blue, indigo, and violet. So red would be low energy, low frequency, long wavelength. Violet would be high energy, short wavelength, high frequency. So you need to know the difference between the colors, have that order memorized.